Hi guys, I just had a few comments on what's happening at the southern border of the U.S. right now. Had a lot of discussion about it lately, and our media, our primary corporate media that's completely corrupt in the U.S. has been describing what's going on at the border as these poor helpless women and their kids who just happen to decide to walk up the length of Mexico with their kids. Some of them with no shoes, and no food, no water, anything. And they just decided to go thousands of miles from Honduras and other places in Central and South America, Venezuela, it looks like, other places, and just walk up and ask for asylum to get away from the bad conditions in those countries. That's what the media is saying in the U.S. It's a good story, but the only problem is it's completely not true. And what's going on is a very sophisticated, organized form of warfare where you train mostly military-age men. They estimate about 90% in the current groups that are coming. And hatred of America, primarily, and the fact that they are entitled to free everything and they need to get on welfare, and Democrats and other allies of them are just waiting to take care of them in the U.S. And of course, it's nonsense that they can just walk up from Honduras and places like that. That's not true, okay? That was completely made up. They pose for the cameras like they're going to walk, and then the buses and trucks come, totally paid for. They get debit cards with $1,000 per leg of the journey, prepaid, no name on the card. And they get food, water, logistical support, the same thing that you would give an invading army that had a really long journey to make, and they had to be in good enough shape to invade the country at the end of that journey. That is what's happening. It's being paid for largely by U.S. taxpayers because the U.S. is the primary funder of the United Nations. A very evil group that for some reason is still allowed to be in the U.S. It should never happen. And the U.S. tax money goes to the UN. The UN pays NGOs, many of them associated with Soros, but all other kinds too, foundations, who are interested in globalism, which means the elimination of sovereign countries and the replacement of individual countries with world tyranny. That's the plan. At least that's part of the plan. And so they have provided the money, usually about $7,000 per person who's going to be in the invading force, to make the journey with plenty of food, water, supplies, clothes, transportation, whatever they need. And then they get off the transportation to have their pictures taken by the media that is complicit in the whole thing. And they have enough women and children with them, chosen by the representatives at the training camps in Honduras and other places, so that when they get to the border of the U.S., prior to breaking through, they can hold up the children, the women can hold up the children and say, see, we just decided to walk up here, we're just crawling our way away from oppressive tyrannies to come to the wonderful United States. That's not what's happening. They're carrying the flags of their own countries, Honduras, Venezuela. One of them was seen with a Syrian flag yesterday, and burning U.S. flags, down with America, chanting along with the Democrats in the U.S., no border, no wall, no USA at all. That's what they're coming for, as well as to be put on welfare and have an easier time once they get in the country. And they're told that if they can break through, because they're unarmed and they're holding up babies sometimes as shields right in front of them, that the media will be there and they'll be guaranteed to be able to get through, because it's immoral to stop them, right? So they can just break into the country. And if this test group makes it through, then there are millions and millions to follow. This is confirmed with military sources, and if you want a lot of detail, you can get it from the news show that we often refer everybody to, that I can't mention on this because we'll get banned right away. But the first part of the name of that show that I recommend for news sources, really well documented, is short for information, And the second part of the name of that place is Wars, plural, W-A-R-S. And maybe you can figure out who I'm referring to. Anyway, that's the reality of it. And the first group has already broken through into the U.S. across the border. And there are thousands and thousands more waiting. And the idea is that ultimately 600 million of these people coming into the U.S. and ending it as a country so that it's no longer the U.S. anymore. And it's just another Honduras or another Venezuela. And it makes it easier to implement world tyranny if there's not a country with some memory of freedom and individual rights, firearms rights, free speech, which is quickly being taken away right now by the social media and the major media, and there's a lot of censorship going on. So, in general, when this was done to Europe, the leaders of the countries, the elected leaders, the presidents and prime ministers and people like that, were all in on it. So they would bring in these, they're not immigrants because they're illegals, okay? And you're being really brainwashed by the television in America and other places. They say things, well, no person is illegal. This sounds really wonderful, right? Like John Lennon's song. But it's twisting of language. No, the person's not illegal. Nobody is saying that. What they're doing is illegal, okay? There's a difference. And when you break into somebody's country or their house or anything like that without permission, without going through whatever procedure the owner of the house or the country wants you to follow, that means you're an invader, like a home invasion or something. That's what's happening on a big scale. So nobody is saying that the people are illegal. It's their action that's illegal. So the Democrats and the socialists and communists and the media, who are all collaborating on it, are trying to twist this and have a crime committed in the name of compassion, which is really, I guess it's an admirable propaganda campaign, but it's just complete nonsense, and it's very malicious nonsense. It's intended to destroy the U.S., and it could do it relatively quickly if they bring in the millions who are set to follow these initial groups. So their problem, one of their problems, is the current president is not in on it in the U.S., and he wants to stop it, and he sent the military to the border, at least a few of them, 5 or 10,000. But then this criminal judge issued a ruling that the president's not allowed to protect the border, which is complete nonsense. The president does not have to follow that ruling because it's totally void. You can't be a judge and make a ruling that the Constitution doesn't apply, because the president is mandated as one of his enumerated powers and jobs to protect the borders. He has to do that. A judge can't say, no, you don't. I mean, he can say that, but it doesn't mean anything. But the problem is the media is completely in on the criminal activity, and they're trying to make the president out like an idiot, and that he's a fascist dictator, and he hates immigrants. These are not immigrants, these are invaders. If they go through the legal process and get accepted, they're immigrants. And the president is married to one of those. He's not against immigrants, he never has been. He's against home invasions or country invasions, and everybody else should be too, because if the U.S. wants to help other countries, they need to do it by being an example of freedom and taking care of their own people, protecting their individual rights, their property rights, their freedom of action, true free market capitalism, not special deals for giant corporations, but making it so that people can survive and use their creativity and do something they like to do for a living. And that's what needs to happen. So right now, the invasion is very well organized. It's very well funded. I mentioned some of the sources that are behind it. You can hear other documentation enumerated on the news show that I mentioned to you, which we don't have time for right now. But I recommend that every day. It's a great source as long as it's available. All the conventional powers are trying to censor it, which is like the seal of approval. You know it's worthwhile. Anyway, there's a problem with this. The country's literally under invasion. It's already been under air raid chemical attack every day. You're not supposed to know about that either. If you want to be scientific about it and respectful in naming it, it's called geoengineering. You should find out about that too. There's a lot of good geoengineering sites now that are educating people on that and saying, no, it's not a conspiracy theory. Sorry, it's really happening. But knowing about these bad things doesn't mean you have to be upset, angry, fearful, anything like that. Those all tie up your energy and burn it up and make you less effective. So there are ways to contribute to turning all this around. And they're not by direct fighting. I don't think we can do it that way at this point. The only real solutions that I see that are possible from this point on are in the realm of consciousness. And if you're interested in that, you want to try to make a real contribution to maintaining and bringing back sanity into the world and taking care of sovereign countries and bringing the whole thing back closer to normal where we're supposed to be, check out planetaryhealingclub.com. That's a private group where we go into things that I can't talk about openly on a public forum like this, but I can allude to it at least at this point. Try not to get kicked off these major platforms right away. That's why I'm being careful. But you're personally invited if you want to join the work of healing the world, starting with yourself. Check out planetaryhealingclub.com and know about these things like I'm telling you about the invasion. It's not to make you upset. That doesn't help anybody. It's to let you know, look, there's important things going on. It's a good time to start taking care of yourself, and that'll allow you to make a contribution to it just by who you are and who you'll become. It's who you always were, and it's what we need to get back to. planetaryhealingclub.com. I'll see you next time.